Marcus Reed wiped sweat from his brow as he adjusted the environmental controls in the research station's greenhouse. 6 months stationed on this remote exoplanet outpost, and he still couldn't get the humidity right for the Earth plants he was cultivating. He'd volunteered for this assignment partly to escape office politics at the Terran Science Division headquarters, but mostly for the chance to study alien biology firsthand. So far, the life forms he'd encountered were mostly primitive, nothing more advanced than the equivalent of Earth's amphibians. The atmospheric analyzer beeped, interrupting his thoughts. Something had triggered the sensors outside the perimeter. Probably just another herd of the 6-legged herbivores that occasionally wandered through the area. "Computer, display external camera feed," Marcus said, reaching for his field kit out of habit. The monitor flickered to life, and his heart nearly stopped. Standing just beyond the station's boundary was a figure, unmistakably intelligent and definitely not human. Bipedal and roughly humanoid, but with iridescent blue-green skin that seemed to shimmer in the planet's amber sunlight. The being had 4 arms and large, almond-shaped eyes that dominated a face without a nose, just breathing slits along high cheekbones. Marcus had been briefed on first contact protocols, but he never expected to actually use them. Humanity had encountered only 2 other intelligent species in its expansion through nearby star systems, and both those contacts had been carefully orchestrated diplomatic affairs, not random encounters on research outposts. The being approached cautiously, examining the station's structure. She, appeared to be alone and carried what looked like damaged equipment. No visible weapons. Marcus made his decision quickly. He grabbed his translator device, a universal communicator, and, on impulse, a banana from his personal rations. Fresh fruit was precious this far from Earth, but something told him this might be important. The airlock hissed as he stepped outside. The alien froze, all 4 arms tensing in what might have been a defensive posture. Marcus moved slowly, setting the translator on the ground between them. He extended the banana, remembering old Earth tales of explorers using food as peace offerings. "Hello," he said, knowing the translator would at least attempt to convert his speech patterns even if it couldn't properly translate yet. "I'm Marcus. Human. Friend." The alien tilted her head, the gesture surprisingly familiar, and carefully approached. She was shorter than Marcus by about a foot, her movements graceful as she examined the banana without taking it. "Talia," she said finally, touching her chest with one of her upper arms. The translator crackled, attempting to process the sound. Marcus smiled, pointing to himself. "Marcus." Then to her. "Talia?" She nodded, another eerily human gesture, and finally accepted the banana. After watching Marcus mime peeling it, she did the same with remarkable dexterity, using her lower set of arms to hold the fruit while the upper set peeled. When she tasted it, her large eyes widened, and a sound like wind chimes emerged from her throat. "I think you like it," Marcus laughed. Over the next few hours, using a combination of the gradually adapting translator, gestures, and drawings, Marcus learned that Talia was a scout from a spacefaring civilization. Her small craft had been damaged navigating through an asteroid field, forcing her to land on this planet, which her people had catalogued but not explored. By evening, she'd shown Marcus her damaged ship hidden in a nearby grove. The technology was far beyond anything humanity had developed, but some of the damage seemed reparable with materials from the research station. "Stay," Marcus offered, gesturing toward the station as the planet's quick-moving dusk approached. "Safe. We fix ship tomorrow." Talia studied him with those large, expressive eyes. The translator, now better calibrated to her language, conveyed her response: "You offered food to a stranger. On my world, this makes you responsible for my well-being." Marcus hadn't expected his impulsive banana offering to carry such significance. "It was just a banana," he said with a smile. "And now I am your most trusted guardian, as you are mine," Talia replied, her skin shifting to a deeper blue that seemed to indicate seriousness. Such is the way when worlds meet. As they walked back to the station under unfamiliar stars, Marcus realized his quiet research assignment had just become the most important first contact in human history, all because he'd given an alien a banana. Marcus awoke to the sound of movement in his lab. For a moment, disorientation clouded his mind before the events of the previous day came rushing back. Talia. The alien. His unexpected guest. He found her examining his collection of earth plant specimens, all four arms carefully turning a potted orchid as her large eyes studied its structure. The morning light streaming through the station's windows caught the iridescent patterns on her skin, creating a hypnotic play of colors that reminded Marcus of Earth's aurora borealis. "Good morning," he said, watching as the translator beside her chimed with the equivalent greeting in her language. Talia turned, her skin shifting to a warm amber hue. "Your flora is fascinating," she said, her voice melodic even through the translator's mechanical filter. "So different from mine, yet similar in fundamental structure." Over breakfast, Talia seemed particularly fond of fruit, consuming 3 more bananas with evident delight. They planned their day. The repairs to her ship would require specialized alloys that Marcus believed he could fabricate using the station's 3D molecular printer. As they worked side by side in the bright sun of the alien world, Marcus found himself increasingly fascinated by his visitor. Talia's four-armed dexterity allowed her to perform complex repairs with astonishing efficiency. Her species, she explained, had evolved from arboreal ancestors who needed multiple limbs to navigate dense canopies. Like Earth's primates, Marcus noted. My own distant ancestors. Talia paused her work, studying him with those piercing eyes. You contain your ancestors within you, then? As we do? The question caught Marcus off guard. Well, genetically, yes. But we don't have access to their memories or anything like that. How strange, Talia replied, her skin rippling with a pattern Marcus was beginning to associate with curiosity. In my people, ancestral memory passes through generations. I carry the experiences of my foremothers within me. The revelation stunned Marcus. The implications for science, for understanding consciousness itself, were enormous. That's incredible, he managed. So you remember. The first time my people reached for the stars? Talia finished his thought. Yes. The first contact with other beings? Yes. Though you are unlike any we have encountered before. As the day progressed into evening, they completed enough repairs that Talia could activate some of her ship's systems. A holographic display sprang to life, showing star charts that made Marcus's breath catch. Her people had mapped regions of the galaxy humanity had barely glimpsed through telescopes. My world, she said, pointing to a star system nearly 1,000 light-years from Earth. Valoria. That night, as twin moons rose over the planet's horizon, they sat outside the research station, the warm air fragrant with alien blossoms. Talia asked endless questions about Earth, about human culture and history. Marcus found himself sharing personal stories, his childhood in Seattle, his parents' disappointment when he chose xenobiology over the family's medical tradition, the broken engagement that had partly driven him to seek this isolated posting. Heartbreak is universal, it seems, Talia said softly. Her translator was barely necessary now, she'd proven remarkably adept at learning human speech patterns. Even among the stars. You've experienced it too? Marcus asked. Talia's skin darkened to a deep indigo. My chosen mate rejected our bond when I was selected for long-range exploration. He could not accept my desire to see beyond our world. Without thinking, Marcus reached out, placing his hand gently on one of Talia's upper arms. Her skin was warmer than human temperature, with a texture like fine suede. His loss, he said simply. Something electric passed between them at the contact. Talia's eyes widened slightly, and her breathing slits fluttered in what Marcus had come to recognize as her equivalent of a gasp. She didn't pull away. "Among my people," she whispered, "touch between unrelated individuals is rare. Sacred." Marcus began to withdraw his hand, embarrassed. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean." But Talia caught his retreating hand with two of her own. "No," she said. "It is, welcome." They sat in silence, 3 hands intertwined, watching unfamiliar constellations wheel overhead. Something was changing between them, something neither Earth nor Valoria had prepared them for. "Tomorrow," Talia said finally, "the communication array will be functional. I can contact my people." Marcus felt an unexpected pang at the thought. "You'll be leaving, then?" Talia turned to face him fully, her free hand rising to touch his face with gentle curiosity. Her fingers traced the contours of his cheek, his jaw, features so alien to her experience. "Not yet," she whispered. And then, with a boldness that surprised them both, she leaned forward. The kiss was hesitant, exploratory. Her lips were warmer than a human's, slightly firmer, but the sensation sent a current through Marcus that was undeniably electric. When they parted, Talia's skin was pulsing with bioluminescent patterns he'd never seen before, waves of light that seemed to follow her heartbeat. "I've studied human customs," she explained, her voice barely above a whisper. "This one interested me particularly." Marcus found himself speechless, his heart hammering in his chest. All his scientific training, all the first contact protocols he'd memorized, none of it had prepared him for this moment under alien stars, for the feeling blooming in his chest that defied categorization in any xenobiologist's manual. "I think," he finally managed, "that's a custom worth further study." As the moons climbed higher in the night sky, human and alien discovered that some forms of communication require no translation at all. The communication array came online with a series of soft beeps and flickering lights. Talia's 4 hands moved with practiced efficiency across the alien control panel, her skin shifting to a concentrated silver blue as she worked. Marcus watched, mesmerized not just by the advanced technology but by her, the graceful economy of her movements, the way her large eyes narrowed in focus, the gentle rhythm of her breathing slits expanding and contracting along her cheekbones. Last night's kiss lingered between them, unmentioned but unmistakably present. Marcus had barely slept, his mind racing with implications both scientific and deeply personal. What had started as a simple act of kindness, offering a stranded alien a piece of fruit, had evolved into something neither of their species had protocols to address. "There," Talia said finally, stepping back from the console. "The signal is transmitting. It will reach the nearest Valerian outpost within 6 hours." "And then?" Marcus asked, trying to keep his voice casual. Talia's skin rippled with colors that betrayed her conflicted emotions. "Then they will send a rescue vessel. Standard procedure." Marcus nodded, feeling a hollow sensation in his chest. 6 hours. Perhaps a day or two before her people arrived. Their time together had an expiration date now, clearly marked. He turned away, busying himself with the environmental monitoring system that didn't actually need adjustment. "Marcus." Her voice was soft behind him. One of her hands, her lower right, touched his shoulder gently. "This troubles you." He turned back to face her. "I'm a scientist," he said with a forced smile. "I should be excited about the prospect of meeting more of your kind. It's the opportunity of a lifetime." "Yet your biochemical signals indicate distress," Talia observed. Her species, she'd explained, could detect subtle changes in pheromones and body temperature. "As do mine." The admission hung in the air between them. Marcus took a deep breath. "Last night was not a mistake," Talia finished firmly. Her skin flushed with deep crimson patterns, passion, she had told him. The translator wasn't needed anymore, they'd developed their own shorthand of understanding. Among my people, such connections are rare and honored. The fact that it happened between different species is unprecedented, but not unwelcome. Before Marcus could respond, the station's communication system crackled to life. Research Station Epsilon 9, this is Terran Science Division Control. Priority transmission. Marcus froze. The monthly check-in wasn't scheduled for another week. He moved to the console, activating the video feed. Director Harlow's stern face appeared on screen, his gray eyebrows drawn together in concern. "Reed, we've detected unusual energy signatures from your location. Our satellites picked up technology that doesn't match any known Terran patterns. Report immediately." Marcus glanced at Talia, who had stepped just out of the camera's field of view. He made a split-second decision. "Sir, I've made contact with an intelligent extraterrestrial life form. A scout from an advanced civilization called Valoria. Her ship was damaged, and I've been assisting with repairs." Harlow's expression transformed from concern to shock to calculating ambition in the span of seconds. "This is extraordinary, Reed. The first unplanned alien contact in human history. Why wasn't this reported immediately?" "Communication difficulties at first, sir. And then I was focused on establishing trust and—" "Is the alien hostile? Armed? Do they have designs on this planet?" "Her name is Talia," Marcus said, unable to keep a defensive edge from his voice. "And no, she's completely peaceful. She's a scientific explorer, like us." Harlow leaned forward. "I'm dispatching a first contact team immediately. They'll arrive within 3 days. In the meantime, gather all the data you can. DNA samples, technology specifications, language patterns, everything. This is no longer a simple research assignment, Reed. This is now a matter of interstellar diplomacy and potential military significance." "Military?" Marcus repeated, his stomach nodding. "Sir, there's no threat here. That's not your call to make, Reed. Secure the alien and her technology until our team arrives. That's an order." The transmission cut abruptly. Marcus turned to find Talia watching him, her skin a troubled mix of blues and grays. "Your people fear mine," she stated simply. "Not fear exactly. But humanity has a complicated history with the unknown." Marcus ran a hand through his hair in frustration. Harlow is a politician as much as a scientist. He sees opportunity here, career advancement, funding increases, his name in the history books. "And you? What do you see?" Talia asked, moving closer. Marcus met her gaze directly. "I see you," he said simply. Something in Talia's expression softened. She reached out with all 4 arms, drawing him into an embrace that felt both alien and utterly right. Her body was warmer than a human's, her heartbeat a different rhythm against his chest, but the comfort of the connection transcended their biological differences. "My people will arrive before yours," she whispered against his ear. "Their response may be similarly complicated." That afternoon, as they waited for responses from their respective civilizations, they abandoned pretense. What had begun as scientific curiosity and diplomatic necessity had transformed into something neither had anticipated. In the privacy of the research station, surrounded by specimens of 2 worlds, they explored the geography of each other's bodies with wonder and growing urgency. Talia's forearmed embrace enveloped Marcus completely as they kissed more deeply than the night before. Her skin shifted with patterns of light that followed his touch, responsive and expressive in ways human skin could never be. When his fingers traced the delicate ridges along her spine, she trembled and emitted soft sounds like crystal wind chimes. "Your people," Marcus asked between kisses, "is this allowed?" Talia's large eyes held his gaze, serious despite the pleasure evident in her bioluminescent patterns. "It is unprecedented. But I carry the memories of my ancestors within me, and none have experienced this feeling before. It exists outside our laws because it was never imagined possible. They moved to his sleeping quarters, falling together onto the narrow bed. Marcus marveled at the alienness of her body, the symmetrical patterns of her skin that responded to his touch with flares of color, the extra joints in her limbs that allowed for movements no human could replicate, the unexpected sensitivity of the breathing slits along her cheekbones that made her gasp when he kissed them. For her part, Talia seemed fascinated by the relative simplicity of human anatomy, by the rough texture of the stubble on his jaw, by the way goosebumps rose on his skin when she traced her fingers along his arms. "Your bodies speak even when you are silent," she whispered. "It's beautiful." Their lovemaking was a process of discovery, tender at first, then increasingly confident as they learned each other's responses. Different anatomies creating unexpected harmonies. Whispered guidance and surprised laughter giving way to shared intensity. Two species finding connection across the gulf of evolution and stars. Afterward, as they lay tangled together in the dim light of the station's evening cycle, Marcus knew there would be consequences. Both their peoples were hours away from discovering their existence. The xenobiologist in him understood the scientific significance, the diplomat in him recognized the political complications. But the man in him, holding this extraordinary being from beyond the stars, couldn't bring himself to regret a single moment. "Whatever comes next," he murmured against the soft skin of her shoulder, "we'll face it together." Talia's skin pulsed once with a pattern he now recognized as affirmation. But before she could respond verbally, the communication console chimed with an incoming transmission. Her people had responded. The holographic projection from Talia's ship filled the research station with ethereal light. 3 Valerian figures materialized, taller than Talia, their skin patterns more complex, their forearms adorned with what appeared to be ceremonial markings. The central figure, clearly the leader, spoke in the musical language of their species. The translator rendered it in a flat monotone that couldn't capture the nuances. "Scout Talia Nvori, your distress signal has been received. A diplomatic vessel has been dispatched to your coordinates. Estimated arrival, 14 Earth hours." Talia responded with formal gestures using all 4 arms, her posture straightening. "Acknowledged, Elder Rattan. I have made peaceful contact with a representative of the planet's dominant species. They call themselves humans." The 3 Valorians exchanged glances, their skin patterns shifting rapidly in what Marcus recognized as concern. "This was not authorized," said Elder Rattan, his large eyes narrowing. "The protocol for unplanned contact is clear." "Circumstances necessitated adaptation," Talia replied, her tone respectful but firm. "The human, Marcus Reed, provided aid and shelter. Without his assistance, my mission would have failed." The elder's attention shifted to Marcus, who stood slightly behind Talia. "Human, what do you seek in exchange for this assistance? Resources? Technology? Military advantage?" Marcus stepped forward. "Nothing. Helping Talia was the right thing to do. Our species has a concept called hospitality, welcoming strangers in need." "Noble sentiments," said a female elder to Rattan's right, her skin pattern skeptical. "Yet we detect unusual biochemical patterns between you both. Has there been inappropriate interaction?" Talia's skin flushed briefly with patterns Marcus now knew indicated embarrassment, then shifted to determined violet. "Elder Nix, with respect, any interaction has been consensual and based on mutual respect. Marcus is not just a primitive as our initial surveys suggested. His people are spacefaring, scientifically advanced. Different from us, but worthy of recognition." The 3rd elder spoke for the first time. "Talia Nvori, you have always been unconventional. It appears isolation on this planet has led to emotional compromise. The High Council will determine what happens next. Until our arrival, you will cease all unnecessary contact with the human." The transmission ended abruptly, leaving the room in sudden darkness. Talia stood motionless, her skin dimmed to a dull blue that Marcus had never seen before. "That went well," he said with weak humor, touching her shoulder gently. Talia turned to him, her large eyes troubled. "My people fear what they don't understand. Much like yours." She gestured to the console where Director Harlow had issued his own commands hours earlier. "We have perhaps 14 hours before my people arrive. Your first contact team will come later. So for a brief window, we'll be on our own with both our civilizations heading toward us." Marcus took her hands, two of them, in his. "What do you want to do with that time?" Talia's skin brightened slightly. "There is a Valerian tradition. When facing uncertainty, we share memory essence with those who matter most. It creates a bond that transcends physical separation." "How do we do that?" Marcus asked. "For my people, it's an exchange of biochemical markers and neural patterns. With a human." She hesitated. "Physical intimacy would be the closest approximation." Marcus smiled, drawing her closer. "I think we can manage that." They spent the night in each other's arms, their lovemaking more urgent now, charged with the knowledge of their limited time. Marcus memorized every detail of her, the warmth of her skin against his, the sound of her crystalline laughter when he discovered particularly sensitive spots, the way her forearms could hold him completely, making him feel simultaneously protected and vulnerable. For Talia, the experience was equally profound. "Your species connects through such simple means," she whispered against his neck, "yet the depth of feeling is extraordinary. If my ancestors could access this memory, they would understand why I've chosen as I have." "Chosen?" Marcus asked, brushing his fingers along the luminescent patterns tracing her spine. "You," she said simply. Her upper hands framed his face while her lower ones pressed against his chest, feeling his heartbeat. "Whatever consequences come, I choose you." The words sparked something primal and protective in Marcus. Whatever happened when their peoples arrived, he wouldn't let her face judgment alone. Dawn broke over the alien landscape, painting the research station in amber light. They dressed in silence, preparing for the arrival of the Valerian ship. Talia had explained it would likely be a mid-sized diplomatic vessel, not the imposing warships her people possessed but still impressive by human standards. "There's something I want to show you," Marcus said suddenly, taking her hand. "Before they arrive." He led her to the station's small shuttle bay where a two-person exploration craft sat fueled and ready. Standard equipment for research outposts, designed for short atmospheric flights to collect samples from different regions. "We could go," he said, the impulsive thought forming into words. "Just us. Find somewhere remote on this planet. Buy ourselves time to figure things out." Talia's expression was tender as she traced the line of his jaw with one finger. "And be forever caught between worlds?" "No, Marcus. We must face this directly. My people must see what I've seen in you, the capacity for connection that transcends differences." Before he could respond, proximity alarms blared throughout the station. A ship was entering the atmosphere, far earlier than expected. They rushed to the observation deck. Breaking through the cloud cover was a sleek vessel of unmistakably Valerian design, but it wasn't the diplomatic ship they had expected. This was smaller, faster, with markings Talia recognized with visible shock. "That's a scout interceptor," she said, her skin paling to an ashen blue. "Used for extraction of compromised agents. They must believe I've been contaminated by contact with your species." The Valerian ship landed with precision on the open ground near the station. Its hull gleamed with an opalescent finish that seemed to absorb and reflect light simultaneously. A hatch opened, extruding a boarding ramp. 3 Valerian security officers emerged, their forearms bearing what appeared to be ceremonial but unmistakably powerful weapons. Behind them came a figure Talia clearly recognized, her skin flaring with patterns of surprise and complex emotion. "Lorith," she whispered. Your former mate? Marcus asked, remembering their conversation from days earlier. Talia nodded, her breathing slits fluttering with agitation. He serves on the Security Council now. His presence here is unexpected. They descended to the station's entrance together, Marcus deliberately standing at Talia's side rather than behind her. A statement of equality that wasn't lost on the approaching Valorians. Lorith was taller than Talia, his skin patterns more angular, his movements precise and controlled. He addressed her in their native language before switching to the translator for Marcus's benefit. Scout Talia, I've been authorized to extract you immediately. Our scans detected. Concerning biological exchanges with the native species. The risk of cross-contamination is unacceptable. Talia's skin flashed with indignant patterns. There is no contamination, Lorith. What has occurred between Marcus and myself was consensual and natural. Loritha's large eyes shifted to Marcus, studying him with clinical detachment. The human appears physically unharmed. Nevertheless, protocol dictates immediate separation and decontamination. I'm not going with you, Talia said firmly. Not without Marcus. The security officers shifted positions subtly, their weapons remaining ceremonial but their stance now unmistakably alert. Loritha's skin patterns registered surprise, then quick calculation. The human may accompany us for proper study, he conceded. It would be valuable to understand how their physiology responds to Valerian contact. Marcus recognized the trap immediately. Once aboard their ship, he would be a specimen, not a person, and certainly not Talia's chosen partner. Actually, he said, stepping forward, I'd like to extend a formal invitation to you and your crew to enter my research station as diplomatic guests of Earth. We have protocols too, and mine include offering hospitality. The move caught Lorith off guard. Refusing would be a diplomatic insult, accepting would place them temporarily under Earth's jurisdiction, even if that jurisdiction was currently represented by a single xenobiologist in an isolated outpost. Very well, Lorith said after a moment. A brief cultural exchange would be acceptable. Inside the station, tensions remained high as Marcus offered refreshments, including Talia's favorite earth fruits. He noticed how Lorith watched her with a mixture of confusion and lingering attachment as she peeled a banana with practiced ease, using her 4 arms in the technique Marcus had shown her. Your ship is smaller than expected, Marcus observed. Not the diplomatic vessel the elders mentioned. I convinced the council that a discreet extraction was appropriate, Lorith replied. To protect Talia's reputation and career. Unconventional contact with an unvetted species would normally result in permanent reassignment to non-exploration duties. You mean punishment, Talia said sharply. For what? Discovering that connection between sentient beings transcends biological differences? For violating foundational protocols, Lorith countered, his skin patterns shifting to authoritative reds. For engaging in biological exchanges without proper analysis of consequences. And yet here we are, Marcus interjected calmly. Both perfectly healthy. Perhaps your protocols need updating. Lorith turned to him, all 4 arms positioned in what Talia had told Marcus was a stance of academic challenge. Human, do you understand what you've initiated? The biological, cultural, and political implications? I understand that I care deeply for Talia, Marcus replied simply. And that what we've shared has meaning beyond any protocol either of our species has established. Care? A primitive emotional response to biochemical reactions, Lorith dismissed. Talia moved to stand between them, her stance protective. And yet you came personally, Lorith, rather than sending a standard extraction team. Was that not an emotional response? The accusation hit its mark. Loritha's skin patterns fluctuated wildly before settling into a reluctant configuration of acknowledgement. The elders are concerned about cross-species contamination. But I... He paused. I wanted to see for myself what could possibly have led you to such an unprecedented choice. You were always drawn to the unknown, Talia, but this is something your ancestors never experienced, she finished for him. Something new in our collective memory. A moment of understanding passed between the former mates, not reconciliation, but recognition. Lorith turned to Marcus, seeing him truly for the first time, not just as a primitive alien but as a being who had earned Talia's respect and more. Show me, Lorith said finally. Show me what you've learned from each other. What followed was hours of cultural exchange unlike anything in the first contact protocols of either species. Marcus shared Earth's history, art, and science through the station's databases. Talia and Lorith demonstrated Valerian meditation techniques that allowed for ancestral memory access. The security officers, initially stiff and formal, gradually relaxed as barriers of suspicion eroded. By evening, when they gathered in the observation dome to watch the twin moons rise, something had shifted. Not acceptance yet, but the beginning of understanding. As night deepened, Lorith approached Marcus privately. She was to be my life mate, he said without preamble. Before she chose the stars over our bond. I know, Marcus replied. And now she has chosen you, a being from another world. Not instead of the stars, Marcus clarified. Along with them. Loritha's skin patterns shifted thoughtfully. The Council will not easily accept this. But. He hesitated. I will testify that I found no contamination threat. Only, unexpected compatibility. It wasn't approval, but it was a start, a small diplomatic victory before the larger challenges to come when the official Valerian delegation and Earth's first contact team arrived. Later that night, when the Valorians returned to their ship to file preliminary reports, Talia and Marcus found themselves alone in his quarters once more. Their lovemaking was different now, deeper, more certain, charged with the knowledge that they had taken the first steps toward bridging their worlds. Do you think it's possible? Marcus asked afterward, tracing the luminescent patterns along her shoulder. For us to find a way forward that doesn't force either of us to abandon our people? Talia's skin glowed with warm, hopeful patterns. The universe is vast, Marcus read. But not as vast as possibility. Outside, beneath alien stars, two ships from different worlds waited on the soil of a third. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but tonight belonged to them, the xenobiologist who offered a banana and the alien explorer who became his most trusted guardian, finding in each other's arms a home neither had expected to discover so far from where they began. The official Valerian diplomatic vessel arrived precisely as scheduled, descending from the clouds with a grace that belied its enormous size. Its hull shimmered with the same opalescent material as Loritha's Scout Interceptor, but on a scale that dwarfed both the research station and the smaller craft. Marcus stood outside with Talia at his side, her four-armed posture formal but her skin glowing with subtle patterns of nervousness only he could recognize. Lorith and his security team formed a respectful honor guard, their earlier hostility replaced with cautious neutrality. Will the elders listen? Marcus asked quietly. Talia's lower hand found his, intertwining their fingers out of sight of the approaching ship. Loritha's testimony carries weight. And the elders respect evidence, even when it challenges tradition. The diplomatic vessel settled onto the planet's surface with barely a whisper, its landing systems far more advanced than anything Earth had developed. A wide portal materialized in its side, and a delegation of 7 Valorians emerged, the 3 elders they had spoken with via hologram, plus 4 others whose formal attire and complex skin patterns marked them as high officials. Elder Rattan led the procession, his 4 arms arranged in a formal greeting posture. His large eyes took in the scene, Talia standing alongside the human, Loritha's team positioned not as captors but as ceremonial guards. Scout Talian Vori, Rattan intoned, your situation has created considerable discussion among the High Council. Talia stepped forward, performing the intricate greeting gesture with perfect precision. Elder Ratan, Elders Nix and Voron, honored counselors. I present Marcus Reed of Earth, xenobiologist and... She paused, her skin flushing with patterns of certainty. My chosen bond mate. A ripple of reaction passed through the Valerian delegation, their skin patterns shifting rapidly with surprise and concern. Elder Nix moved forward, her forearms performing a scanner gesture over both Talia and Marcus. You speak of bond mating with a species whose biology is entirely different from our own, she said, her tone neither approving or condemning, simply scientific. This is unprecedented. As Security Counselor Lorith can attest, Talia replied, there has been no contamination or harm from our connection. Only new understanding. Lorith stepped forward, his formal posture impeccable. I have conducted thorough examinations and found no biological hazards. In fact, there appear to be unexpected compatibilities between Valerian and human physiologies despite our different evolutionary paths. Elder Voron, the most conservative of the three, made a dismissive gesture with his upper arms. Biological safety is only one concern. What of cultural contamination? Knowledge transfer? The human now possesses information about our civilization, our technology, our capabilities. As do I about theirs, Talia countered. That is the nature of contact between civilizations. We have shared knowledge freely, as equals. Marcus stepped forward. My people are preparing their own first contact team. They'll arrive within 2 days. This is an opportunity for both our species to establish relations through understanding rather than suspicion. Elder Ratan studied Marcus with those large, inscrutable eyes. You speak wisely for a species our surveys classified as early-stage spacefaring. Perhaps our assessment was incomplete. Or perhaps, said a new voice from the Valerian delegation, this particular human is exceptional. A female Valerian stepped forward, her skin patterns more vibrant than the others, her forearms adorned with what appeared to be scientific insignia. I am Zelia, chief xenobiologist of the High Council. I would speak with this human scientist directly. What followed was an intense scientific exchange that lasted hours. Marcus shared his research, his understanding of the planet's ecosystem, and his observations about Valerian biology, carefully omitting the more intimate details of his knowledge of Talia's physiology. Zelia proved to be keenly intelligent and surprisingly open-minded, her questions probing but respectful. By midday, the atmosphere had shifted from diplomatic tension to cautious scientific collaboration. Even Elder Voron seemed grudgingly impressed by Marcus's knowledge and approach. Your methodology is sound, Zelia concluded. Though your technology lags behind ours by perhaps a century, your theoretical frameworks are remarkably compatible with our own. It suggests parallel evolutionary paths of scientific thought despite our biological differences. Different paths to the same stars, Marcus suggested, earning an appreciative color pattern from Talia. As the twin suns began their descent toward the horizon, Elder Ratan called for a formal council. The Valorians retreated to their vessel for private deliberation, leaving Marcus and Talia waiting anxiously at the research station. What happens if they forbid this? Marcus asked, holding Talia in the privacy of the lab. If they demand you return with them? Talia's skin pulsed with determined patterns. Then I would request formal separation from Valerian service. It would mean exile, cutting me off from the ancestral memories of my people. But... Her forearms tightened around him. Some discoveries are worth such sacrifice. I won't let you lose your heritage, Marcus promised, pressing his forehead against hers in a gesture they had developed between them. Whatever happens, we'll find a way. The Valerian delegation returned as night fell. Under the light of the planet's twin moons, Elder Ratan addressed them formally. The Council has deliberated extensively on this unprecedented situation. Normally, such a connection would be forbidden until comprehensive studies could be conducted over many cycles. He paused, his skin patterns shifting to a formal configuration. However, these circumstances are exceptional. Elder Nix stepped forward. Counselor Zelia has made a compelling case for the scientific value of your continued association. And Counselor Lorith has vouched for the absence of biological hazards. Marcus held his breath, feeling Talia tense beside him. Therefore, Elder Raton continued, we propose the following. Scout Talia Nvori will be redesignated as Xenobiological Ambassador to Earth. She will remain with human Marcus Reed to continue their personal research while also serving as official liaison between our species when Earth's representatives arrive. Talia's skin erupted in brilliant patterns of joy and relief, so bright they nearly illuminated the gathering. The Council honors us, she said formally, though her voice trembled slightly. There are conditions, Elder Voron added sternly. Technological exchange must be carefully regulated. And your biological connection must be documented for scientific purposes, with appropriate privacy protocols. Marcus suppressed a smile at the thought of their intimate relationship becoming an officially sanctioned scientific study. Some aspects of bureaucracy, it seemed, were universal. We accept these conditions, he said formally. The gathering concluded with a ceremonial meal shared between humans and Valorians, the first official diplomatic exchange between their species. As they ate, Lorith approached Marcus privately. You have achieved what I could not, he said without preamble. Talia's heart. I think it was the banana, Marcus replied with gentle humor. Loritha's skin patterns registered confusion, then understanding. Ah, the ritual food offering. Yes, in our ancient traditions, such offerings created sacred bonds of obligation. Perhaps some cultural universals do exist across the stars. Or perhaps, Marcus suggested, connection is simply part of who we are as living beings, finding kinship even across different worlds. Later that night, as the Valerian delegation returned to their ship with plans to establish a temporary diplomatic post nearby, Marcus received a transmission from Earth. Director Harlow's face appeared on the screen, his expression a mixture of excitement and barely contained frustration. Reed, what the hell is going on out there? Our satellites show an alien vessel that appeared out of nowhere, far more advanced than anything we've encountered before. Yes, sir, Marcus replied calmly. Talia's people arrived. We've established preliminary diplomatic relations pending the arrival of Earth's official first contact team. Harlow's bushy eyebrows rose nearly to his hairline. You, what? Reed, you're a xenobiologist, not a diplomat. What authority did you have to? With respect, sir, Marcus interrupted, feeling Talia's reassuring touch on his shoulder outside the camera view. When a previously unknown spacefaring civilization makes contact, someone has to represent humanity. I did what I thought was right. To his surprise, Harlow's expression shifted from outrage to something like respect. Well, I'll be damned. The first human to establish official alien relations is a field researcher who couldn't even get his environmental controls right for Earth plants. Marcus laughed. Life is full of surprises, sir. Indeed. Harlow leaned closer to the camera. The first contact team has been expedited. They'll arrive tomorrow. But read this alien, Talia. Our instruments detected some unusual energy patterns between your life signs and hers. Care to explain that? Marcus felt Talia's hand tighten slightly on his shoulder. That's actually a fascinating area of xenobiological research we've been pursuing, sir. I look forward to presenting our findings to the team when they arrive. Harlow's eyes narrowed suspiciously, but he let it go. Very well, Reed. Just make sure humanity's first impression on these Valorians is a good one. Harlow out. As the screen went dark, Marcus turned to find Talia watching him with amused bioluminescent patterns dancing across her skin. Xenobiological research, she quoted, her forearms crossed in a gesture he'd come to recognize as playful skepticism. Well, we have been studying our biological compatibility quite thoroughly, he replied, pulling her close. Very hands-on research. Talia laughed, the sound like wind chimes in the quiet of the research station. And now we have official permission to continue our studies. For science, of course, Marcus murmured against her skin. Of course, she agreed, her 4 arms encircling him completely. Though I think what we've discovered goes beyond science. The Valerian ancestral memories will now carry the experience of loving across species, across worlds. That's a lot of pressure, Marcus said, only half joking. Our relationship is going to be remembered by generations of Valorians? Talia's skin glowed with warm patterns as she guided him toward the bedroom. Then let's make sure we give them memories worth preserving. 1 year later, the research station had expanded into a small but thriving diplomatic outpost. Earth's first contact team had grown into an official embassy, and the Valerian delegation maintained a permanent presence. Initial wariness had given way to cautious cooperation, with scientific and cultural exchanges flourishing under the careful guidance of 2 people who had bridged the gap between worlds. Marcus stood on the observation deck, watching the twin moons rise over the alien landscape. So much had changed since that day he'd impulsively offered a stranded visitor a banana. Behind him, the door slid open, and Talia entered, her skin glowing with the special patterns reserved only for him. The council has approved our request, she said, all 4 arms animated with excitement. We can establish the Joint Xenobiology Research Center. And her skin flushed with deeper colors. They've also approved our formal bond ceremony. Marcus pulled her into an embrace that had become as natural as breathing. Earth's diplomatic corps signed off too. Apparently, we'd become too valuable as interspecies liaisons for anyone to object to making it official. Practical of them, Talia observed, her eyes sparkling with humor. Humans can be pragmatic when it suits us, Marcus laughed. Besides, the fact that neither of us sprouted extra limbs or started glowing in the dark, well, one of us was already doing that, has reassured the xenophobes on both sides. Talia's 4 hands found his face, his shoulders, his hands, touching him in the way that had become their own private language. When I crashed on this planet, I expected to complete a routine survey mission. I never expected to find a home. When I offered you that banana, I was just following first contact protocols, Marcus replied softly. I never imagined you'd become my most trusted guardian. And you, mine, Talia whispered. Outside the window, a shooting star streaked across the sky between the moons, a symbol that both their cultures, separated by light years and evolution, somehow shared. Perhaps the universe had more in common than differences after all. As night deepened, Marcus and Talia stood together at the threshold of a new chapter, not just for themselves, but for both their peoples. Their unusual bond, begun with a simple offering of fruit, had opened a path between worlds that neither could have imagined alone. And as they moved together toward their quarters, skin against skin, heartbeats synchronizing despite their different rhythms, they carried with them the profound truth they had discovered, that love, like life itself, finds a way, even across the stars.